Incredible twist. Billionaire discovers his two long-lost daughters. Alive after 10 shocking years. David Hawthorne stood at the edge of his luxurious estate, the rain lashing against the glass as thunder rumbled like a dark orchestra above him. He felt nothing. Wealth, success, and status surrounded him like gilded bars of a prison, yet the only sound echoing in his heart was the haunting silence of a decade lost without his wife. Memories of laughter, warmth, and intimate moments had dissipated into the shadows of his mind. Instead, he busied himself with his corporate empire, retreating into the cold embrace of spreadsheets and board meetings rather than confront the ambiguous emptiness left by her tragic death. A rumble of thunder jolted him. Almost instinctively, he retreated into the attic, a space filled with ghosts of his past. As he rummaged through forgotten boxes, each item tugging at the cords of nostalgia, he stumbled upon an unassuming box marked with his late wife's elegant handwriting. Heart-pounding, David's fingers trembled as he opened it. Inside, he discovered brittle letters filled with words that spoke of love, dreams, and daughters. His mind raced. Daughters? The revelation hit him with the force of a freight train that had been barreling toward him for years. Mia and Lily were alive. In a frenzy, he sifted through the pages, the ink smudged but legible. Stories of life after the accident, tales of survival and adaptation to lives he had never known. But guilt gnawed at him. He had buried the thought of their existence beneath layers of ambition and grief. Denial? Hope? The stark contrast haunted him as he likened their lives in small-town America to the kind of privilege he had taken for granted. As he allowed the letters to breathe life into the vision of daughters he had fallen asleep dreaming of, the flaws in his perfect world became glaringly apparent. How could he have been so blind, so selfish? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. David's heart raced as he made the decision to embark on a quest. His world shifted from the plush confines of his estate into the bustling chaos of small-town diners and dusty libraries. Each interaction with patrons and waitstaff grounded him, revealing layers of human experience he had long overlooked. Yet with every intriguing lead, the shadows of his past loomed larger. Complications arose when he uncovered a sinister twist. A former business partner had manipulated circumstances for their own gain, adding pressure that made his heart pound with desperation. As David wrestled with the weight of parental guilt, he was forced to confront societal prejudices that threatened to swallow him whole. The realization that empathy often eluded him gnawed at his core. Would he be able to face his girls, or would he remain just another remnant of a past they had bravely left behind? Clenching his jaw, he pushed forward, battling against the suffocating weight of lost years. Time was running out. The more he unearthed, the more he realized that reclamation might come at the steepest price yet, one that could alter the very essence of who he thought he was. With the faint sound of sirens blaring in the distance, he felt the inevitability of a reckoning close in, ready to strike when he least expected it. David stood on the creaking floorboards of his sprawling estate, still dumbfounded by the discovery of his daughter's existence. The weight of their lives pressed heavily on his chest, anchoring him in one place, yet propelling him forward with an urgency he had never known. He had poured more than just his ambition into corporations. It became clear now that he had submerged his identity in profit margins, losing sight of the introspective journey that defined true success. With the rain still falling outside, he felt a surge of anger, both at himself and the circumstances that had left him so detached from his own humanity. He wondered how many other relationships he had taken for granted, how many connections had slipped through his fingers while he chased the ephemeral sparkle of wealth. He clutched the stack of letters tightly, his fingers crumpling the fragile pages. As if the weight of the world rested on those brittle sheets, he felt compelled to act, to transform guilt into something constructive. He pivoted sharply, the resolution flaring within him. It was clear he needed to keep the past from suffocating the future. Each lead he had uncovered drew him deeper into the lives of Mia and Lily, but it also dragged up shadows from his own life, a tangle of missed opportunities and unvoiced regrets. He could no longer pretend he had all the answers. More importantly, he couldn't ignore how little he truly understood about family, love, and sacrifice. During a chance meeting with a waitress who had seen his daughters around town, David realized he wasn't just a billionaire seeking to reclaim lost children. He was a father searching for ways to bridge monumental gaps of misunderstanding and estrangement. With newfound determination, he made a plan. The moment called for real action, not just investigative tactics in small-town cafes, but a genuine effort to present himself not as a wealthy stranger, but as a man striving for connection. He started to consider ways to engage with Mia and Lily that honored their experiences, the resilience they had shown growing up without him. However, his former business partner loomed large in his thoughts. The betrayal weighed heavily, turning his resolve into a simmering rage. David could not simply stand by while the legacy of his life was manipulated for somebody else's gain. He needed to disentangle himself from the powerful web of deceit, but doing so would require stepping outside the protective shrouds of wealth that he had clung to for so long. The battle ahead was not just against a villain, but against the very identity he'd crafted, the one that dictated how he expected people to view him. As he discovered more about his daughters' lives, David also began digging toward a deeper understanding of his own identity. A father tuned into feelings rather than figures, someone who respected the journey rather than merely the destination. As sunrise broke through the storm clouds, casting rays of light into the attic, he grasped at the threads of hope intertwining with the past. The sky's cleansing felt metaphorical. It suggested that clarity was just around the corner. Yet there was still a darkness threatening to obstruct his path. He couldn't escape the feeling that confronting Mia and Lily would reveal not only their truths, but also the motivations hidden within himself. A realization struck him with an unsettling clarity. Every relationship demands vulnerability, and he had shielded himself from that truth for far too long. The warmth of a newfound flame ignited within him, one that mingled with the fierce defiance against his former self. As David stepped into the crisp air, it wasn't just refreshing, it was a symbol of rebirth. He steeled himself for the next step. The time had come to face the consequences of 20 years of silence, and there were no easy paths leading to reconciliation. Drawing in a deep breath, he started down the road that could lead him to reclaim not just his daughters, but a sincere, uncomplicated version of himself. Just as he turned onto the street, a text pinged on his phone. "We need to talk. It's about your daughters." The words sent chills racing through him. What did this mean? With adrenaline surging, he hurried toward an uncertain future. David's heart raced, filling with an electrical pulse as he stared at the screen in disbelief. The message was a lifeline, but also a warning. His daughters, Mia and Lily, loomed larger than life in his thoughts, their faces haunting yet hopeful. He tightened his grip on the phone, wrestling with a storm of emotions. What kind of talk did they need to have? He pushed through the front door of his mansion, intent on preparing for a conversation that might shatter or rekindle the fragile hope he had built. Inside, his once immaculate office felt cluttered, every piece of furniture an artifact from a life that seemed both foreign and intimately familiar. He took a seat at the grand desk and closed his eyes, imagining their small hands playing with toys in the living room, catches of laughter reverberating through the hallways. That version of David felt real, but so did the faceless businessman he had been, a ghost in a world built on numbers and transactions. As he began to clear his desk, removing papers that no longer mattered, the weight of his neglect beginning to lift from his shoulders, his thoughts flickered back to his former partner. The realization that their entanglement had not only cost him money but his daughters, too, filled him with a cold fury. How many times had he ignored the voices of those around him, choosing profit over people? The desk, now free of its clutter, mirrored the uncluttered thought invading his mind. He needed to face his past to create a future. He had long since let ambition drown out the more delicate, messy aspects of living. Each stroke penning thoughts on the notepad in front of him was more than organization. It was a commitment, a tangible vow to shift away from being just a businessman and toward becoming a father, seeking to earn their trust. David laid the foundation for future conversations in each line, enumerating essential questions he would ask Mia and Lily, simple but profound inquiries that emphasized his desire to learn their stories. What had their lives been like? What things brought them joy, pain, and everything in between? A lingering doubt crept in as he mulled over these thoughts. His wealth and intimidating presence could cloud initial conversations. Would they see him as a father or merely a faceless tycoon? It posed a moral imperative. His success, a gilded cage for their first impression. He recognized that the greatest risk lay not in the talk itself, but in being open and vulnerable. Deciding not to delay any longer, he soon pulled out his phone, composing a response that was carefully worded yet raw. "I'm here, ready to listen more than I've ever listened in my life. Just tell me when and where." But the anxious anticipation remained a tether on his heart, drawing him back to painful memories. The laughter that mimicked his daughter's voices now felt like an echo of defeat in a life he had nearly erased. Yet striding into the future, he could feel empowerment in acknowledging that he had another chance to right wrongs, not just for himself, but for his daughters, who deserved a father present in his entirety. As daylight waned outside, he stood against the backdrop of falling shadows, pondering the choice before him, a decision underscoring the importance of dismantling the barriers he had erected. Would he take the leap and confront the consequences of his past life, or continue to hide behind the facade of wealth that had brought him nothing but solitude? Just then, a soft ping interrupted his thoughts again, a reply that would shift the momentum of the evening. "Tomorrow, meet us at the park." The weight of those words settled into his stomach, quelling the momentary rush of empowerment. This meeting could very well banish his dreams or ignite them. The stakes had never felt so palpable. With a heavy breath, David envisioned the park, the laughter of children escaping into the evening air. He realized that not only were his daughters there, waiting with their own truths, but also that a significant confrontation with his own identity awaited. The path was laid out before him. Tomorrow would bring him face to face with the echoes of the past, tangled with opportunities for redemption, and there was no escaping it now. David awoke the next morning with a sense of unrest pacing through him like a caged animal. He had barely slept, his mind consumed with the conversation that awaited him at the park. The clock ticked louder than ever, a constant reminder of the impending meeting with Mia and Lily. He couldn't shake the doubt that clung to him. What if they had moved on? What if the years away had changed them beyond recognition? He dressed methodically, each article of clothing carefully chosen in a desperate attempt to project an image of the father he was striving to become. The tailored suit felt uncomfortably tight, a facade that only highlighted his insecurity. Would they see through his presentation, or would they believe in the version of himself he tried so hard to embody? Stepping out of the house, he squinted against the harsh sunlight, each ray hitting him like a reminder of his shortcomings. As he made his way to the park, he reflected on the ways life had spiraled from the dreams he once held dear to the stark reality he now faced. The luxury cars that lined the streets felt like symbols of failure instead of success, and the smile from the barista at his favorite coffee shop felt alien. He was no longer the man he once was. On arrival, the park was bustling with families enjoying the day together, their laughter piercing through David's thoughts. He felt a wave of isolation wash over him, realizing how thoroughly he had distanced himself not just from his daughters, but from the world. They were supposed to be here. He was supposed to be family. With each tick of the clock echoing in his ears, he found a bench at the edge of the playground, resting his hands on his knees, palms sweaty and clammy. He started rehearsing the questions he had written the night before, but suddenly halted, overwhelmed by a chilling realization. He could ask all the right questions, but they might not yield the trust he so desperately sought. Words could only go so far. Trust was built through actions. Then he saw them, Mia and Lily, approaching with tentative steps. His heart sank at the sight of them. They were no longer children. They had grown in ways he had missed entirely, yet something about their presence felt like a familiar thread, connecting him back to a life he had let drift away. As their eyes met his, a flicker of recognition opened up a floodgate of memories he tried hard not to conjure. They paused, uncertainty etching their faces. For a moment, time stood still, and all David could do was stand, unanchored in this new reality where he hoped to mend past wounds, but had the power to create even deeper ones. "Dad?" Mia finally spoke, the word hesitating on her lips like a child learning to say it for the first time. That one utterance shattered years of silence and solitude, and David nodded, his voice clenching in his throat. "I'm here. I've missed you both." Lily shifted slightly, her eyes wide and piercing, as if she were assessing the sincerity of his words. "You weren't there," she said softly, almost accusingly. "You left us." The truth landed like a weight in his stomach. He had no rational defense for the years of absence. There was an undeniable sting in the air, the looming sensation that this conversation could turn dark, spiraling into regretful accusations, or a bonding moment that could spark newfound hope. David had imagined this moment countless times, but the reality was unlike any scenario he had envisioned. With vulnerability washing over him, he felt the urgency to reclaim not only his daughter's hearts, but also his identity. "I know I can't change the past, but I want to be here for you now. Please, let's talk." As his words settled into the atmosphere, he felt a shift in the air, the beginnings of something honest brewing between them that could either heal or hurt. But the question lingered. Was he ready for the truths they'd share? Would the shadows of his past haunt this chance at redemption? Or could he finally be the father they deserved? Both girls exchanged glances, and a silence fell thick with anticipation. He could sense their guarded walls, the hesitance born from betrayal and abandonment. The moment had arrived, and he was standing on the precipice of a pivotal transformation. By stepping forward, what truths might he uncover about himself, and about them, that could threaten to unravel everything he thought he knew? The park felt charged, reality bending around them as uneasy tension danced in the air. Would today be the day he learns to truly embrace his role, or the day he discovers the irreversible fractures left by his absence? David took a deep breath, trying to dispel the heaviness in the air. The moment was unfolding before him, yet he felt paralyzed by the weight of his choices. His daughters were no longer the little girls he remembered. Mia, with her bright eyes that spoke volumes, stood before him a young woman, while Lily, on the edge of adolescence, wore the accumulated sadness of too much time lost. "Why now?" Lily's question hung unchallenged, slicing through the uncertainty. David searched for an answer that would resonate with the girls, something that wouldn't feel like a hollow excuse wrapped in regret. "Why did you come back when you had the chance?" There was an urgency to her voice, an undercurrent of anger that warned him not to treat this lightly. He couldn't tell if she wanted closure or confrontation, and that fear sent a shiver of insecurity coursing through him. "I realized," he began, fighting to make his voice steady, "that I wasn't just abandoning you. I was abandoning myself by not facing my mistakes. I thought separation was protecting you from my failures." The words felt inadequate, almost feeble against the gravity of her emotions. He watched her expression wrestle with conflict. His admission had sparked a flicker of understanding, but it was buried beneath layers of hurt and confusion. Trust, it seemed, was too heavy a burden to ask for with words alone. Mia, seeming more composed but equally conflicted, stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "You think that just showing up makes everything okay? That we can just forget all the birthdays you missed? The dance recitals? The fights we had to face alone?" Each word was like a dagger, punctuating the years of absence that echoed through their shared silence. David's heart tightened at the painful truth she shared, but instead of crumbling, he felt a flicker of resolve igniting within him. "I know it doesn't fix anything. I've hurt you both, and I understand if you can't forgive me." He raised his hands, palms facing them as if to show he meant no harm. "But I want to earn back your trust, not just through words, but actions." Their eyes narrowed, weighing his sincerity. Had he built enough fortitude to keep his word? Would he even know how to navigate this new role he was so desperately trying to claim? "I don't expect anything from you right now," he said, a determination simmering under the surface. "But I want to understand. I want to learn about your lives, your experiences without me. This isn't about me. It's about you, and I need to know who you are now." A flicker of hesitance crossed Mia's face, but then she spoke again, softer this time. "You want to learn? Start by telling us why you left. What happened?" Her question struck a nerve deep within him. He had avoided the painful truth for too long, even from himself. The specter of his choices hung over him, looming larger than he had anticipated, thrusting him into the past he had tried to flee from. Could he confront that reality? The silence that settled between them felt pregnant with possibility, a moment pregnant with the potential for revelation, for transformation. He glanced at each girl in turn, seeing the barriers they had erected, and a deeper truth began to emerge within him. They too were victims of his choices, yet it was time to confront it all. As he opened his mouth to narrate the despair that had led him away, the narrative of failure and escape that weighed heavily upon him, a sudden thought clawed at his mind. He wasn't just their father, he was a man who had to discover who he could become, not in their absence, but through their painful truths shared together. But would the truth set him free, or dig him deeper into the shadows he longed to escape? The answer loomed as unyieldingly as the path ahead of him, fraught with peril and the promise of self-discovery. The park shifted around them as birds joined the chorus of uncertainty, and David felt the moment slipping. Today wasn't just about reconnection. It was a confrontation with the deepest recesses of his own identity, and he was about to step into revelations that would shape their fates. Would he bring the girls closer or push them further away? The weight of that thought pressed against his heart as he began, "Okay, I'll tell you everything." And with that opening, he felt the air shimmer with the tension of unguarded truths waiting to be unleashed. With the words hanging between them, David felt an insistent nudge of urgency, prompting him to delve into the truth, to peel back the layers of his past and expose the rawness hidden within. As he prepared to speak, a part of him recoiled at what he might reveal, yet another part recognized that to regain his daughter's trust, he had to lay bare the very reasons that had driven him away. "I left because—" His voice faltered as painful memories flooded back. He closed his eyes momentarily, summoning the courage needed to speak the unspoken. "Because I felt overwhelmed. I wasn't the man you needed me to be. I was drowning in my failures, in my inability to provide for our family." The wound felt fresh, reopening the scars he thought had long healed. Silence enveloped them as his daughters processed his words. He could sense Lily's skepticism, while Mia appeared to be grappling with a mix of empathy and indignation. The dynamic tension in the air was palpable, wrapping around them like an unbreakable thread connecting past with present. "I convinced myself that leaving would make it easier for all of you. I thought, maybe, it would be a way to protect you from my own inadequacies. But in reality, I only succeeded in abandoning you," he continued, regret saturating his voice. Each word felt like a key unlocking emotions he had clamped down for far too long. But there was more happening within me. Mental struggles that spiraled out of control, a sense of worthlessness and self-recrimination that consumed me. He breathed deeply, feeling the weight of honesty. "I didn't have the tools to cope with the growing demands of life as a father. Instead of facing my demons, I ran." Mia exchanged a glance with Lily. Both seemed to react to his revelation, perhaps recognizing that they had only seen the man who had left them behind, a man whose perceived weakness had suddenly been transformed into something achingly human. "Would you really have stayed, knowing how ill-prepared I was?" he asked, almost rhetorically, as if searching for a thread of validation for his past actions. But instead of answering him, Mia leaned closer, a spark of something shifting in her eyes. "You ran away because it was easier, but what did you think we were doing? We were screaming for you, every single day. We needed a dad who would struggle beside us, not one who would choose escape." The weight of her accusation hung in the air, piercing through the remnants of his justifications. David felt the truth of her words resonating deep within him, like a cruel reminder that his actions did not just impact him. They had reverberated through the lives of the two girls before him. "I know it was cowardice," he said, choked by emotion. "But I want to be brave now. I want to do whatever it takes to show you that I'm here for you, no matter how hard it gets." Lily crossed her arms, skepticism still clouding her expression. "And how do we know you won't just leave again when things don't go your way? You say you want to understand us, but you don't even know what your actions have done to us. Do you?" Her words pierced through him like shards of glass. In that instant, David realized that understanding went beyond the surface. It required acknowledging the pain, the betrayal, and the resolve he needed to forge anew. "No, I don't know the extent of your pain, but I want to be better. I need to understand you, and the only way I can do that is by listening." A long moment passed, and for the first time since he returned, he felt a flicker of hope amidst all the tension. Could his willingness to be vulnerable, to own his past, pave the way for healing? Yet deep down, another layer of dread began to surface. What if he wasn't equipped to handle their truths? What if the deluge of emotions was more than he could bear? As he looked between Mia and Lily, wondering what hidden emotions remained just below the surface, he faltered. "There's so much more to say, to reveal. But I can't do it alone. You have to help me understand the full story." And as soon as the words left his lips, he felt the tension tighten once more. He had issued a challenge not only to his daughters, but to himself. Would he have the fortitude to confront the full weight of their shared experience, or would the ghosts of his past still loom larger than the possibility of rebuilding trust? The uncertainty clung to him as he braced for their responses, each moment a needlepoint of vulnerability. What he didn't know was that their answers would define not just his journey, but also unearth buried emotions within Mia and Lily, leading them down a path they had never anticipated. There was a palpable stillness in the air as Mia and Lily shared uneasy glances. David could feel his heart pounding, an urgent reminder of the stakes at hand. He had opened the door to a conversation steeped in pain, yet the silence that lingered was as intimidating as any storm. Mia finally broke the quiet, her voice a mixture of steel and vulnerability. "Okay, if you really want to understand, let's start with the day you left. It was my birthday, Dad. I thought you'd surprise me like usual. Instead, you vanished." A flicker of hurt surged through her eyes, reminding David that this was not just a discussion of abstract feelings, it was raw, personal, and deeply woven into their shared history. "I never wanted to hurt you," he managed, clutching the edge of the table as if it could ground him against the memory. "I hoped, that it would be better for all of you." Mia's anger ignited. "Better? It shattered our lives. Mom did her best, but your absence created a void we couldn't fill. We learned to navigate life without you, and it was brutal. You put everything on us, and now you want us to help you understand." The weight of her words fell heavily on him. Each accusation was a sharp reminder of his failures, yet David could feel his resolve hardening. What she said was true, but it didn't erase the damage he wished to heal. He had to bear this cross if he wanted to be part of their lives again. Lily, who had been silent, moved closer. Her expression shifted somewhat, uncertainty mingling with a hint of hope. "You say you want to listen, but can you really handle the truth? We're not the little girls you left behind. We've changed, we've had to grow up fast, and we've learned to cope without you." There was intensity in her words, enough to stir both dread and excitement within him. He sensed he was standing on the edge of a precipice, teetering between the past and an unknown future. "I need to know how to be your father again," he confessed, driven by a primal urgency. "Tell me what you need from me." Mia sighed in frustration. "Start by being honest about your failures. It's not just about listening. You need to take ownership of your part in this." Her gaze bore into his, demanding accountability. David nodded, bracing himself for the emotional deluge. "I know I've failed monumental. My failures of courage and presence have haunted me. I cannot change the past, but if you allow me, I can change the future." When neither Lily nor Mia spoke, the silence became charged, a canvas of untold stories waiting to be painted. David decided to push deeper, confronting his own inadequacies. "Perhaps I should open up to you truly. What if I told you about the nights I spent, racked with guilt and regret, wishing I could turn back time but knowing I couldn't? What if I shared how many nights I wanted to contact you both, but feared what my presence might bring?" Their expressions shifted, revealing curiosity mixed with lingering resentment. His vulnerability seemed to pierce through the armor they had built, opening a tiny window of empathy. "We're not children, Dad," Lily interjected softly, her resolve softening slightly. "It doesn't take away the pain, but I guess we can see that you've suffered too." In that moment, David felt something shift, not just within him, but in the shared atmosphere among them. Perhaps his daughters could see him not merely as the man who abandoned them, but as a flawed human, desperate for redemption. "Let's see where this leads," Mia said, a cautious tone edging back into her voice. "We'll help you understand, but it's not going to be easy." His heart raced, a cocktail of hope and looming dread. This wasn't just about him considering how to be a father. It would demand facing all the complexities and painful truths of their interconnected lives. "I'm ready for whatever it takes," he promised, though a shadow of fear lurked in the back of his mind. What if the revelations they shared unearthed layers of betrayal far deeper than he could handle? As the room thickened with shared breaths, he felt they were on the verge of something transformative. But the looming vulnerability of those next steps gnawed at him. Would he have the fortitude to endure the complexities ahead, or would the weight of shared pain crush his resolve? The question lingered, unresolved yet heavy with possibility. What awaited them on this precarious path of understanding? Would they forge a bridge back to each other, or would the skeletons of his past erode the fragile beginnings of their reconciliation? The tension settled around David like an invisible cloak, heavy and constricting. He could sense the emotional weight that surrounded them, thick as fog. Trust was not just a luxury. It was the foundation he needed to rebuild with his daughters. And trust grew from transparency and accountability. As they sat in the kitchen, the remnants of a brief childhood still lay scattered around. Colorful crayons, faded pictures, echoes of happier times that felt impossibly distant. "Okay, let's start with the truth," Mia prompted, her words both an invitation and a challenge. "Why did you leave? You mentioned thinking it was for the best. What did you believe was so superior about that decision?" David took a deep breath. Memories flooded back, cluttered yet vivid, the hushed arguments, the shame growing inside him like a weed, and the constant need to escape. "I felt trapped," he finally admitted, his voice steadier than he imagined. "Not by you or your mother, but by my own failures, the weight of expectations I believed I couldn't meet. I convinced myself that leaving was protection for you both." "Protection?" Mia echoed, incredulity lacing her tone. "You thought disappearing was a good way to protect us?" His heart raced as he recognized the absurdity in his past logic. "I see now how misguided I was. But at the time, I was drowning in my own insecurities. I wanted to end the cycle of disappointment." As the words left his lips, he saw Mia's expression shift, the crack in her armor appearing just slightly. Was it empathy? Or was it merely a moment of confusion? Lily interjected, her brow creased in annoyance. "And what does that even mean? Arranging our lives around a father who decided his own anguish was more important than being present?" The fire in her tone compelled David to wrestle with another emotional reality, that while he had been reckless in his choices, Mia and Lily had borne the consequences. He felt a wave of anger inside himself, not directed at them, but at the past years of inertia, years spent in self-pity rather than healing. "You're right," he replied. "I made it all about me. I put my anxiety above your well-being, and for that, I am deeply sorry." "A simple sorry isn't enough to fix 10 years of absence, Dad," Mia stated, countering with a fierceness that made David admire her strength, yet it was also a cold reminder of the road ahead. "There's no formula to make this right," Lily added quietly, her vulnerability contrasting her fierce exterior. "You might feel regret, but we need to see proof. Actions over words." He understood what they were saying. They were asking him to prove he was more than just an apologetic ghost from their past. He needed to show that he had courage, that his spirit had fortitude. "So show me then," he said, a new resolve filling him. "Show me what it means to be part of your lives, and I'll do everything I can to earn that chance." A flicker of approval crossed Mia's face, quickly replaced by the shadow of skepticism. "Fine, we'll help you, but it starts today. That means facing our realities, not just talking. You'll have to witness why we don't just forgive and forget." "Agreed," Lily affirmed, crossing her arms in a gesture that exuded both defiance and an underlying desire for connection. And so began a new chapter. A radically different kind of journey. David was no longer just recounting reflections of guilt. He stood determined to action. What could he offer? What skills could he enhance to rebuild this bond? Starting today, he would listen not just with his ears, but with intent. As they navigated the details of their lives, Mia's college stress, Lily's budding career aspirations, David felt a nagging thought clawing at the back of his mind. Was he equipped to contribute meaningfully to these conversations? He had buried himself in his own crisis for so long that he might be hopelessly out of touch. Suddenly, the thought crystallized. He needed to rediscover himself, to understand who he had become, so he could bring value to his daughters' lives. In being a father, he had forgotten what it meant to stand tall in his own shoes. Next time, I'll bring my thoughts on reinvention, he promised half-heartedly, yet a surge of adrenaline rushed through him. The notion of personal growth ignited the fight within, the fire to craft a path toward reconciliation. With the stakes laid bare before them, every word was both a lesson and a weight, and David sensed that their journey had merely begun. Could he muster the courage to dive deeper into his own insecurities, to emerge stronger? As the shadows of past defeats lingered, another question surfaced. What hidden talents lay dormant within him, waiting to be unlocked? But would unearthing those skills be enough to bridge the gap, or would the chasm of lost years prove far too wide? The weight of the conversation hung suspended in the air like a storm cloud, and David felt the first genuine flicker of purpose ignite within him. He knew he needed action, a tangible step toward rediscovering himself and repairing the rift that had grown over the years. With a sudden clarity, he decided that today would serve as a springboard for change. He cast aside the remnants of self-doubt and focused on what tangible steps he could take to demonstrate his commitment. "What if I join you for dinner tonight?" he suggested, trying to inject a hint of hopefulness into his proposal. "I can help cook or bring something you all like. It could be a start." Mia raised an eyebrow, glancing slightly at Lily. "Sounds like a simple plan, but really, how much do you remember about us? We haven't exactly shared family dinners in a long time." The challenge left David uneasy but resolute. "I might not recall specifics," he admitted, digging deep to tap into his fading memories. "But I understand the importance of those moments, and I want to create new ones. We can take it slow, but this is where I start." Her expression softened, though skepticism never left her gaze. "All right, but you need to be honest. Not just about your intentions, but also your abilities. You can't show up and just pretend you've got everything together." "True," he replied, the weight of her words sinking in. "Let's be honest. I need to rediscover who I am beyond the labels I had embraced. Father, husband, failure. I want to contribute meaningfully. What if that starts with cooking? The activity itself could turn into conversations." David noticed Lily perk up slightly as he mentioned cooking. Was it nostalgia or merely curiosity? Either way, it opened up a path he hadn't anticipated. "I remember your favorite, Mia," he said, an old memory bubbling up. "That pasta dish with spinach and garlic. You used to love it." "You could mess that up too," she retorted playfully, a challenge in her tone. "But I'm willing to give you a chance to prove otherwise." A wave of relief washed over him, and although he still felt the anxiety percolating beneath the surface, there was a flicker of excitement. It felt good to be focusing on something outside his own grief, redirecting his energy into fostering connection. As he began to gather ingredients from the kitchen, he realized the emotional significance of this task. Each item represented a shift, a transition from remorse to action. He could almost hear the past echoing in the clattering of pots and pans, each jingle reigniting aspects of his essence he thought long dead. Working alongside his daughters, David felt the rhythm of camaraderie return, albeit cautiously. Each movement, each interaction was infused with moments of hesitation, as if they all recognized the tension that still lingered. Silence fell after a while, prompting David to look up and meet their eyes. "Why don't we talk about our expectations while we're working?" he suggested, his voice steady despite the trembling undercurrents of uncertainty. "I need to know what you both expect from me as your father going forward." Mia took a breath, weighing her words carefully. "I expect you to be present. That means more than just physical presence. It means being engaged, caring about our lives, I need to be able to rely on you, even after everything. I want respect, Lily added, a slight tremor in her voice. You've lost our trust, and it'll take time to rebuild that. Pay attention to what we need and not just what you think is important. As they spoke, David felt the walls closing in, that familiar tightness returning slightly as he recognized the enormity of what lay ahead. Their hopes, their needs, rested heavily on his shoulders, but he also felt an inkling of encouragement, the opportunity to redefine himself and tap into the potential he had overlooked for so long. But as the aromas of garlic and simmering tomatoes filled the kitchen, swirling together to create a bittersweet symphony, a deeper query lingered in his mind. What if, in this journey of rebuilding relationships, he unearthed not only past connections, but also his latent aspirations? Suddenly, the pressure struck him sharp. Could he really harness the skills he'd long abandoned? Could he connect the dots between his scattered aspirations and the man he needed to become? With their expectations laid bare and the bubbling sauce serenading their tentative reconciliation, David realized that tonight's dinner could be a linchpin moment, dialing up the stakes. The moment was ripe with possibility, but uncertainty threatened to derail it all. Would the ghosts of their past continue to haunt them, or could he lay the groundwork for a future steeped in trust and compassion? As he stirred the pot, the boiling questions brewed within him. Who was he going to be in this new chapter? And more importantly, how would his daughters respond to the man he aimed to become? David stood at the kitchen counter, the aromas of garlic and simmering tomatoes swirling through the air, weaving a tapestry of emotions that enveloped him. Today was more than a mere presentation of a meal. It was a testament to his commitment, the first steps into a future he honed to reclaim through sincerity and action. The simmering pot of pasta embodied both the mistakes of the past and the tangible promise of rebuilding bonds strained beyond recognition. As the sauce thickened, so too did the reality of the moment. Mia stood at one end of the counter, observing with cautious eyes, while Lily busied herself with setting the table, a task that transformed simple action into a ritual of hope. Their past circumstances loomed large, yet the familiarity of a shared meal began to break those barriers slowly. "How do you think it'll taste?" David asked, attempting to blend levity into the air thick with seriousness. "Maybe about as good as how you've handled everything else," Mia shot back, but the corner of her mouth turned upward in a subtle smile. "But who knows? Maybe you'll surprise us." Lily paused, turning her gaze toward him. "Surprise is something we're not exactly counting on." David swallowed hard, the challenge igniting the resolve within him. "Consider it my first goal. To earn your trust through simple tasks, I've learned that my actions matter far more than my words ever could." He stirred the sauce, visualizing the moments shared within these walls, the laughter and the joy long gone, but not erased. As they settled around the dinner table, David felt a strange mix of pride and vulnerability. The clattering of cutlery punctuated the silence, but it was a silence softened by anticipation. He watched them closely, noting the subtle exchanges of glances and the waves of tension ebbing and flowing. This moment was pregnant with potential, yet steeped in the consequences of what was yet to be revealed. "Let's eat," he proposed, attempting to break the stillness. "And as we do, I want to know about your lives, your hopes, your dreams, and what you grew to love while I was absent." Mia rolled her eyes but then spoke up, curiosity peeking through her defenses. "Fine, let's see if the food matches up with what you said." As they took the first bites, David watched their expressions, bracing for criticism. What he found instead was contemplative silence. Their eyes darted towards each other as if sharing a subtle acknowledgement. Perhaps he had taken the first correct step, one that paved avenues for dialogue beyond mere proximity. Lily broke the quiet, a tentative voice lacing her words. "I've been accepted into an art program. I want to create art that speaks to the struggles we face, pieces that evoke emotion, something raw." "Wow," David replied, truly engaged. "I'd love to learn more about that. What inspired you?" "Life," she said simply. "The experiences that shape us, yours included." David felt the weight of her words settle in, an acknowledgement of his absence intertwined with a desire for understanding. "I'm sorry for taking that from you, all of you. I want to share the journey of art with you, not just as a father, but as someone who learns from your perspective. As the dinner progressed, they began to exchange memories, each recollection a stitch weaving them closer. There was laughter, punctuated by discomfort, but as Mia spoke about her experiences in college and Lily recounted her passions, David found his heart beginning to swell with a sense of belonging that felt alien yet thrilling. With each story shared, he realized his victories were tied not to personal achievements, but anchored in their triumphs. They reminded him of the potential for nurturing dreams, no matter how fragmented their relationship had become. What about you? What do you want to achieve going forward? Mia asked tentatively, gauging his reaction. David leaned back in his chair, confronted with his own vulnerability. You know, I've spent too many years in the shadow of my past. My identity was consumed by my business, but it began to feel empty. I didn't just want wealth. I yearned for significance beyond success. He paused, letting his words sink in. I want to work in a way that channels energy into something meaningful, maybe even contribute with art, reconnect with creativity. Art? Lily offered with a raised eyebrow. Yes, David laughed lightly, enjoying the unfamiliarity of the discussion. I might have to start painting or something equally humbling. It's a start, Mia replied, a hint of encouragement coloring her tone. The air felt charged, not just with memories, but as a burgeoning opportunity for shared aspirations. As they finished their meal, David sensed the transformation lingering just beneath the surface. Each conversation was a step toward mending broken trust, revitalizing relationships. The feelings intertwined with laughter and meaningful exchanges began to weave their bond back together, strand by strand. I want us to be a family again, he admitted, his gaze unwavering. But I understand the trust is fragile. I'm prepared for the time it takes to rebuild. Will you join me in that? Mia and Lily exchanged glances once more, longer this time, and in that unspoken moment, David felt a glimmer of something beautiful, an acknowledgement of mutual willingness to invest in each other's lives. Time passed, and what felt like an insufferable heaviness began to lift. This dinner was not a conclusion but a beginning. It marked the rebirth of connections that David thought lost forever. The past reflected through their shared conversations served as a roadmap to guide him towards the father he aspired to be. Tomorrow, may I take you to that art gallery, Lily? David asked, an invitation to delve deeper into her dreams. And perhaps, Mia, we could explore opportunities together. Sure, they replied almost in unison, but the flicker of enthusiasm on their faces revealed more than words could convey. David realized in that moment that not only had he taken significant steps toward transforming their relationships, but he had embarked on his own personal journey of reinvention. In the days that followed, they built routines, shared meals, art discussions, and personal critiques, each one another intricate thread woven into the tapestry of their new reality. David began volunteering his time at a local art studio, discovering a passion long buried and developing confidence that resonated beyond his entrepreneurial skills. Through each experience, he underwent a metamorphosis. Recognition within himself unfolded as he embraced his vulnerability, accepted constructive criticisms with grace, and learned the dynamics of a family he thought fractured beyond repair. The distance once felt closed. They forged ahead with tentative trust and hope. David manifested affection through action, sharing each delight invested in their crafts as he gradually unearthed his own. Days transformed into months, and with each interaction came the reaffirmation of growth, solid confidence that they could create space for one another, fulfillment rooted in resilience. David achieved not merely familial connections but autonomy in pursuing a future steeped in significance. As spring approached, warmth radiated through their interactions, and once frail bonds solidified. A family reunited, healing from the past. The memory of that fateful dinner marked not merely a meal, but a turning point, an emphasis on essential human connections and the transformative power of genuine love and commitment in the face of challenges. Today, David Hawthorne stood at the edge of not just emotional fulfillment, but tangible success, recognizing his daughters, once voids in his life, now remarkable women capable of reshaping their futures. Each day grew richer as they defined their relationship, finding purpose together through shared values and authenticity. David felt an exhilarating sense of triumph, one forged from empathy and dedication, knowing he could face any condition life presented as long as they navigated it together. It was what true success meant, achieving not just wealth, but presence, connection, and the joy of discovering shared dreams. Now he had more than anything he once defined as success. Now he had family. If this journey of transformation has touched you, you need to subscribe now. Don't miss out on more exclusive emotional stories that lead to profound self-discovery. Leave a like now to fuel this journey and help us reach others who crave uplifting stories. Comment your reactions and thoughts about this evolution, or share your own transformations. We want to hear from you. And don't wait even one more second to share this with at least 5 friends who need a boost of hope. Let's inspire those around us together.